When a federal judge blocked Trump's border order, he didn't tweet. Instead, he walked straight into the Supreme Court and confronted Chief Justice John Roberts face-to-face with the entire nation watching. The leather chair creaked softly as Donald Trump leaned back, eyes fixed on the TV screen above the Oval Office fireplace. The news ticker remained unchanged for 30 minutes. Federal judge blocks deportation order, Trump administration in contempt. He didn't blink. Across the room, Caroline Driscoll, his press secretary, hovered near the doorway clutching her iPad like a shield, knowing better than to disturb the president's silence. James Boasberg, Trump finally said flatly. He thinks he's running the country now.
Caroline steppet forward.
Judge Boasberg's ruling cites the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. I know what it cites, Trump snapped, his voice controlled but cutting. He found the oldest dusty statute he could wrap in modern outrage and called it justice. On the coffee table before him lay a thick binder filled with annotated immigration policies, border maps, and court transcripts, pages marked in red ink.
Trump stood.
They're daring me to act out, daring me to cross a line so they can scream dictator on TV for the next 5 weeks. Pam Bondi entered from the West Wing hallway dressed in dark navy, carrying only a notepad and wearing an expression that suggested she'd overcome worse challenges. It's not just El Paso anymore, she said. Boasberg's ruling has already halted flights from Phoenix, Tucson, and Brownsville. ICE is scrambling.
Trump's jaw tightened.
We're enforcing immigration law, and they're calling it a constitutional crisis. Pam continued reviewing her notes. It's more than that. They're preparing contempt proceedings, claiming we're acting in bad faith, his exact words publicly stated.
Sie längse lingert.
Trump turned toward the bulletproof window overlooking the South Lawn, gazing past the reporters and cameras to something distant. Contempt, he repeated, almost amused. They used that word when I tweeted. Now they use it when I try to secure the border. Caroline finally spoke. Media is circling. If we remain silent, they'll write the narrative themselves. Good, Trump replied without turning.
Let them vritte.
He stepped back into the room, his voice strengthening. We'll give them something worth writing about. Pam raised an eyebrow questioningly. I won't let a bench of cloaked activists override the people who elected me. If Roberts wants to defend that system, let him do it publicly. Carolyn gasped slightly. You want to address the court? Trump didn't answer directly. Instead, he opened his desk drawer and removed a folded copy of Judge Boasberg's order, holding it like evidence in a trial. Let's see if they still believe in transparency when the lights are on and cameras rolling.
Pam exhalet sharply.
You're calling them out live? Every last one, Trump confirmed, starting with John Roberts. If he thinks this is about procedure, he hasn't been paying attention. Carolyn nervously tapped her screen. You'll be accused of politicizing the judiciary. I'm not politicizing it, Trump corrected. I'm exposing it. He paused, looking at both women. Americans didn't vote for federal judges. They voted for a president. I won't watch this system become a courtroom monarchy while they pretend to protect democracy. Pam nodded slowly. Then we should prepare for a storm. Trump smiled faintly.
Let it come.
What began in a courtroom was about to erupt before the entire nation. The statement hit Washington like a silk-wrapped brick. Not a press conference, no podium or sound bites, just a brief PDF uploaded to the Supreme Court's official site at 9:03 a.m. By 9:07, every newsroom, blog, and phone screen in America blazed with a headline: Chief Justice Roberts responds to Trump's call for impeachment. Pam Bondi read it twice before entering the West Wing briefing room. This isn't defending the courts, she said quietly, handing the printout to Carolyn.
It's a warning. Caroline scans the page.
Roberts' words were cold and calculated. Impeachment is not an appropriate response to legal disagreement with a judge. The judiciary must remain independent, even when issuing unpopular or inconvenient rulings. Trump wasn't in the Oval Office but downstairs in the Roosevelt Room with Senator Felix Morton from Florida and DHS Deputy Director Carl Higdon. Both men had cleared their schedules when Roberts spoke, knowing Trump wouldn't remain passive. He's posturing, Morton said, flipping a pen in his hand. Trying to remind America that courts are sacred ground. Trump set down his coffee.
Sacred ground?
They've turned it into a battlefield.
Carl leaned forward.
Boasberg's order wasn't judicial review, it was sabotage. They're blocking policies before implementation.
Trump nodded.
Now Roberts hides behind tradition, as if robes make them untouchable. He stood with a movement that silenced everyone. This isn't about policy anymore. It's about control. Pam entered quietly, placing Roberts' statement before him. Trump didn't need to read it, he already knew the tone. Roberts never shouted, he buried opponents with sentences crafted to sound timeless.
Watse Angle? Morton asked.
Carolyn joined them. Media will frame it as a call for unity, measured leadership in chaotic times. But our base recognizes it as deflection. They want judges to have permanent veto power. They don't want to win elections, Trump said. They want to block whoever does. He walked slowly to the fireplace, the same one presidents had contemplated since Roosevelt. We gave them years to fix this. What did they do? They held panels, gave speeches.
Now veni act, TCY tyranny. Pam crossed her arms. What's your strategy, Mr. President?
Trump didn't answer immediately. Instead, he regarded them not as colleagues but as soldiers about to receive a mission.
They want courtroom rulings?
We'll give them courtroom cameras. Felix Morton raised an eyebrow.
Jure serious. I want a live session.
I want Roberts facing me with Americans watching. No statements, no redacted footnotes.
I want farces. I want accountability. Carl Higdon looked uncertain.
You think they'll agree?
They won't have a choice, Trump replied.
I'll frame it as a legal forum, a national summit on judicial restraint. They claim to want transparency.
Let's test that.
Carolyn was already typing on her iPad.
Media will flood it.
Roberts will appear evasive if he refuses. Felix chuckled, half disbelieving. This breaks every precedent. Trump picked up Boasberg's order again, staring at it. So did that judge when he overruled the entire Department of Homeland Security with one signature. Pam exhaled through her nose. Then we need a name, something impactful. Trump considered briefly. Call it the National Judicial Reform Summit. Caroline looked up. You want it at the Supreme Court?
No, Trump said. I want it inside the Supreme Court.
The room fell silent as the implications became clear. This wasn't about a speech or statement, it was confrontation, one branch against another, with nowhere to hide.
Felix glanced at Pam.
He's serious.
Trump nodded once.
They wanted a fight they could win quietly.
I'm dragging it into the light.
But Trump wouldn't respond with a tweet this time. He wanted a microphone and a stage. The official invitation reached inboxes just after midnight. No leaks, press hints, or anonymous aides whispering behind closed doors. Just a formal email from the president's office, bearing the official seal and addressed to the Supreme Court. You are formally invited to participate in the National Judicial Reform Summit, to be held live and on record within the Supreme Court chamber. The purpose is public discourse on judicial authority, nationwide injunctions, and constitutional balance of power. By 8 a.m., news had exploded. CNN called it an audacious move. Fox ran with Trump demands accountability from the bench. MSNBC labeled it a stunt. But no one could ignore it. Chief Justice John Roberts read the invitation silently. He didn't call a press conference or issue a statement. Instead, he gathered with three colleagues, Justices Linda Young, Edward Salazar, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, in a private room off the East Hallway. Roberts placed the letter flat on the polished table. He wants to turn this into televised confrontation, Young said, frowning. This has never been done. He's not asking, Salazar muttered. He's daring us to refuse.
Jackson leaned forward. Do we ignore it? Dismiss it?
Meet privately. Roberts studied the paper, his expression unreadable.
We attend.
If we refuse, we support his narrative that we're hiding, afraid.
Young shook her head. This isn't a forum.
It's a trap. Roberts finally looked up. Then we'll enter clear-eyed and controlled. He seeks spectacle, we'll respond with civility. That's our line. Meanwhile, across town in a room lined with flags and framed maps, Trump outlined a different vision. We're not just showing up, he told his team.
We're staging a reckoning.
The summit would make history. Cameras would record every word. 2 lecterns would stand, one under the Supreme Court seal, the other beneath the presidential eagle crest. Carolyn, on her third coffee, typed press credentials. We've had over 200 media requests in 3 hours. International outlets are begging for floor access. Pam reviewed security protocols. We'll need federal marshals, Capitol Police, Secret Service, comprehensive coverage. This isn't just politics, it's national spectacle. Felix Morton entered holding Roberts' folded statement. He's agreed to attend, bringing 3 justices. says he won't prepare remarks, wants to speak unscripted. Trump smiled purposefully.
Perfect. The more unfiltered, the better.
Caroline looked up.
Wart the Objektive. Trump leaned against the table edge.
To break their illusion. They've wrapped themselves in formality so long they believe it makes them untouchable. People need to see them not as symbols but as fallible men and women.
Pam hesitated.
And if they redirect? Paint you as the tyrant. He answered without pause.
Let them.
The difference is I answer to voters. They answer to no one. Preparations moved quickly. By day's end, the Capitol architects team had installed lighting inside the chamber. Lecterns were positioned, sound checks completed, Secret Service swept the perimeter. Outside, reporters claimed sidewalk spots with folding chairs and thermoses. Protesters gathered on both sides, one group chanting for judicial independence, the other holding banners reading, "Let the people govern." At 10 p.m., Trump stood alone in the White House East Room, reviewing freshly printed notes. No speechwriter had touched them, just his thoughts, his warnings. Felix entered quietly.
Ready for tomorrow.
Trump didn't look away from the papers.
Vire by und ready.
He closed the folder slowly. Tomorrow, America hears what they weren't supposed to. But no one expected what Trump would say before the cameras. The Supreme Court chamber had never witnessed anything like it. Never in its history had a sitting president stood eye to eye with the Chief Justice, not through lawyers or briefs, but in the very house of American law, with cameras rolling and the nation watching. At precisely 11 a.m., Donald Trump entered from the East Corridor. No teleprompter, no polished notes, just a slim leather folder under one arm and an unwavering stare. He didn't wave or smile. He approached the podium as he had entered 100 rooms before, alone, steady, determined. Across from him, Chief Justice John Roberts sat at his bench's head, flanked by Justices Young, Salazar, and Jackson. His hands were clasped before him, posture erect, composed, reserved, measured as always. Press cameras clicking filled the room's edges. Live feeds had activated. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and smaller networks all displayed the same banner, the Judicial Summit, live from the Supreme Court. Trump scanned the room once, then began. When I swore to defend this country, I didn't expect to address not enemies overseas but silence draped in formalities, he said.
Jet hier wie a. He paused.
A federal judge recently blocked my administration from deporting individuals deemed threats under laws predating most people in this chamber. When we enforced the law anyway, because law should outweigh interpretation, we were accused of bad faith. He held up Judge Boasberg's folded order. This isn't law.
This is leverage.
Roberts remained motionless. Cameras briefly captured his face, still unreadable.
Trump continued.
Now we're told impeachment isn't appropriate, that we should wait, appeal, follow process. But how long do you wait when judges invalidate policies before implementation? How many injunctions until voters seeking change receive none? His tone remained steady, not shouting but charged. This nation wasn't built for 700 unelected lawyers to rule from behind closed doors. He turned slightly toward Roberts. Chief Justice, I respect your position but not your doctrine. When citizens demand action and courts answer with silence, that's not neutrality, that's surrender. Roberts leaned forward, gently adjusting his glasses. In a calm, crisp voice, he responded, Mr. President, with respect, this institution exists not to reflect public passion but to temper it. Courts aren't rescue vehicles for stalled policies or weapons of political urgency.
Trump didn't interrupt.
He listened, arms folded across his chest. Roberts continued. You speak of overreach, but this court has reviewed executive action since Marbury versus Madison. That's not rebellion, that's responsibility. He leaned back slightly. The judiciary isn't the Constitution's threat, Mr. President.
It's its safeguard. Trump stepped forward.
Then why does it only seem to safeguard one side? The room froze. No gasps, no applause, just the silence that follows when words land powerfully and no one knows how to respond. Trump opened his folder and extracted a copy of the Declaration of Independence. Cameras zoomed in as every network adjusted focus. This document didn't create kings, it dismantled them, he stated, looking down, then back up. If we allow the judiciary to make national decisions in isolation, without consequence or election, we've lost more than balance, we've lost the republic. He dropped Boasberg's injunction onto the floor, letting it fall, letting the moment breathe. They call it judicial review, he said. I call it judicial rule. Roberts flinched, barely, but enough for viewers to notice. Trump looked directly into the camera, not at the bench or justice, but at the people. You were told courts protect you, but when a single judge can nullify your vote with a stamp, that isn't protection. That's power theft.
He paused.
Today, in this chamber, we're reclaiming that power. But the ensuing silence wasn't respectful, it was recognition that the room no longer belonged to the robes. Elon Musk didn't sit during the summit. He stood in the Supreme Court chamber's back corner, leaning against the wall like someone who foresaw this path. Phone in hand, he typed one sentence into X as Trump returned to the podium. A courtroom just became a battlefield. By the time Trump reached again for the declaration, that post had exceeded 2 million views. But Trump wasn't pursuing views or applause. What he sought, what he always sought, was clarity.
Now he had it.
He turned the parchment slowly in his hands and addressed not the court but the nation. Thomas Jefferson warned about powerful men who display virtue while quietly stealing the people's voice. He paused, then read clearly and deliberately, "An oligarchy in robes is still an oligarchy." Those words fell like a stone in the chamber. The phrase cut through centuries of legal tradition like a knife through fabric. Though Jefferson never wrote those exact words, they felt authentically his. Pam Bondi, seated behind the president, remained still. She didn't need to move. Her silence wasn't fear but recognition. Having practiced law long enough, she knew when history was being written in real time. Roberts sat like granite, upright, hands folded, but tension in his jaw betrayed him. Trump stepped away from the parchment and surveyed the crowd of reporters, aides, and citizens filling the high-walled chamber. When one lifetime appointed judge can prevent a president from defending the border, you don't have balance.
You have tyranny with better formatting.
He bent down, retrieving the dropped injunction from the floor. Holding it up, this document, signed by one man who's never faced election or voters, never had to answer for the chaos it caused.
He turned toward the court.
We had agents positioned at the southern border in McAllen, ready to intercept cartel smugglers. Within hours of this order, they were told to stand down, not because laws changed, but because one man typed a sentence in a PDF and clicked send. He looked back at the camera. They don't want a bench, they want a throne. And I'm telling you now, this nation won't submit to robes pretending neutrality while blocking every elected action they oppose.
Elon glanced at his screen.
The post now trended worldwide under hashtags #bench-versus-ballot and #court-takeover. Thousands commented, not just Trump supporters but independents, even some Democrats. It transcended party, it concerned control. Justice Young leaned toward Roberts, whispering something only he heard. But Roberts didn't move.
Not yet.
Trump's voice lowered, not from fatigue but focus. I was elected to perform a job.
You misleike my mythos. That's fair.
That's democracy. But if unelected judges can erase policies without debate or vote, then this republic no longer belongs to the people. He turned back to the justices. It belongs to the people in this room. Slowly, he withdrew another sheet from his folder, blank on one side, but bearing a handwritten, boldly underlined quote on the other. He read aloud, "Power without accountability is not justice, it's theft." He held it high for all to see. And that's what this has become, a quiet, careful theft of the people's voice. He dropped that page too.
No sound, no cough, no fortschaffling. Just the cold, perfect quid of a momento significanto disrupt.
Outside, protesters locked in competing chants. Police barriers strained. Reporters clutched phones in disbelief, uncertain whether they covered a government event or a revolution unfolding live. Back inside, Trump delivered his section's final words with the same cold intensity he'd maintained since entering. If Roberts won't fix it, we will, legally, constitutionally, but completely. But the final impact came not from the podium, but from those watching at home. The next morning, America didn't wake confused, it woke certain. Every major network replayed the confrontation continuously. Clips flooded social media, some mere seconds long. Trump holding the declaration, Roberts frozen mid-reaction, papers hitting the floor. Yet they carried an era's weight. On local radio in Bakersfield, Fresno, Mobile, and Amarillo, callers discussed not party lines but power dynamics. Silence in a system they'd watched for decades being questioned by someone unafraid to voice what most never dared. Pam Bondi entered the West Wing press room at 8:02 a.m. carrying stacked folders. "Mr. President," she said, entering the Oval Office, "reaction exceeds expectations." Trump, already seated sipping coffee and reviewing notes, replied without looking up, "Good. That means they heard."
Carolyn followed Pam.
Nearly 20 congressional members have reached out, senators too. Several want to co-sponsor immediate legislation targeting injunction reform.
Give it a name, Trump directed.
People don't rally around complexity.
Pam opened her folder.
We're drafting the Judicial Accountability Act.
Perfect, Bondi responded.
Let courts answer to someone besides themselves. At noon, Senator Felix Morton stood on the Capitol steps introducing the bill. It proposed stricter guidelines for nationwide injunctions, mandatory review timelines, and public records for all emergency rulings blocking executive orders. Meanwhile, Elon Musk advanced several steps further. From his X account, he announced Courtlight, a new digital transparency tool tracking every federal judge's active rulings against executive authority in real time. The map illuminated with glowing dots. The public could now see which judges were blocking which policies. Not just numbers but names, profiles, court locations, summaries. Comments and public ratings followed. It was legal accountability in an era when most assumed the bench was sacred and beyond question. Roberts made no follow-up statement. He returned to chambers and continued working as if it had been any ordinary day. But inside the court, something had shifted. Whispers between clerks changed. Reporters circled the building differently. The illusion had dissolved. Caroline stood beside Trump that evening, watching a News Nation live segment. The commentator paused mid-thought and observed, "We're not witnessing mere politics anymore. This is constitutional course correction."
She turned to him. You think this will endure?
Trump didn't answer immediately. He studied the declaration copy now hanging on the Oval Office wall, inches from where Obama's mirror once hung. "It won't last unless we remain louder than the silence," he finally said.
Pam entered.
The left is mobilizing, editorials calling this judicial intimidation, legal experts on cable warning it sets dangerous precedent.
Good, Trump replied. Let them protest.
They've been sheltered by that silence too long. We didn't break the system, we broke the illusion. Across the country, people responded not with anger but reflection. Retired factory workers in Ohio, ranchers in Arizona, a high school civics teacher in Wichita Falls who printed the speech for students to analyze line by line. This transcended one party, case, or judge. It addressed the fear that citizens' voices had been stolen, not with weapons or armies but with signatures, robes, and courtrooms most never entered unless summoned. That fear now had a name, as did the resistance. Elon's Courtlight app surpassed 5 million downloads within 72 hours. The Judicial Accountability Act gained bipartisan support from states that hadn't agreed on anything in years. For the first time in over a decade, a Gallup poll showed trust in the federal judiciary had fallen below 35%. But Trump didn't hold rallies or tweet victory laps. He simply returned to his desk, reopened the folder, and wrote names, not enemies, just reminders of what happens when power remains unchecked too long. But Trump hadn't finished. For him, this wasn't about victory but warning. The storm had passed, but skies hadn't cleared. Across the nation, living rooms remained quiet, dinner tables buzzed with questions, and radio hosts dissected every second of the broadcast. But beneath all the noise, something fundamental changed. People were thinking, genuinely thinking, not about which side won or left versus right, but about something deeper, something they hadn't considered in years: who truly governs? In a modest apartment outside Flagstaff, Arizona, 62-year-old Marlene Cross sat on her couch edge, laptop open, eyes focused. She hadn't voted in 2 elections, not from apathy, but believing it futile. That night, something awakened when she watched a sitting president tell the highest court face-to-face that their silence had transformed into power.
It stiert so meeting unnahmet.
For the first time in years, she didn't feel ignored, she felt acknowledged. In Jackson, Mississippi, former Marine Corey Bell watched from a barbershop. He said nothing while the clip played, but afterward turned to others and remarked, "That's what I've tried explaining for years, right there." The Supreme Court had been the final branch people still considered non-political. Now they questioned, if judges can prevent presidents from fulfilling duties without answering to voters, is that still democracy? At a Yuma charter school, a history teacher stood before her class holding Trump's closing line printout. She read slowly, "We're going to dismantle it legally, constitutionally, but completely." Looking up at her students, "What does this mean to you?" A student raised his hand. That rules can't protect you if they're only protecting themselves. There it was, the lesson. This confrontation wasn't about one executive order or judge. It concerned a government quietly becoming accountable to itself rather than the people it claimed to represent. For years, citizens learned that courts were neutral, justices wise, black robes symbols of balance. But what happens when those robes become shields? When neutrality becomes an excuse for inaction? Trump didn't yell, curse, or point fingers. He held up the nation's founding document and asked the question too many feared voicing: who really runs this country? The answer wasn't reassuring because it wasn't clear. Not Congress, not the president, not voters. It was a system grown so comfortable in silence, so accustomed to operating without scrutiny, that being questioned now felt like assault. But it wasn't attack, it was reminder that power belongs to citizens, that checks and balances aren't ceremonial but real, and if one government branch becomes too insulated, too immune from accountability, it doesn't matter how old the building or how polite the language. It's no longer a republic but a throne surrounded by guards pretending to be a bench. Outside the Supreme Court weeks later, someone taped a handwritten sign to the marble wall. It didn't read Trump 2024 or Vote Red. It said, "We gave you trust, not immunity." That message wasn't just for Roberts or judges but for every elected leader, appointed official, every suited figure who forgot America isn't powered by process but by people. The summit ended, but the shift had just begun, carrying one simple truth: if democracy is real, it doesn't dwell in robes or rulings but in voices, loud, imperfect but free.
If you believe this country belongs to the people, speak luder tanse silence.
Subscribe and stay aware.